There are many ways a man reveals who he is, not with fists, not with wealth, but with his words. When the tongue moves, the mind unveils itself. Let us speak today not of attack, nor of retreat, but of discernment. There are words a man may say, casually, repeatedly, or in moments of anger, that tell you more than any confession ever could. These words are not just sound, they are signs, and when you hear them, you must not argue. You must not wait for change, you must walk away. Here are 5 such signs. What a man says is never just about the words themselves. Every syllable, every tone, every pause is an echo of the structure within. When a man speaks, he opens a window into his inner temple. You don't need to see his achievements, his clothes, or his gestures. Listen closely to how he speaks, especially when no one is watching, especially when he's under pressure. In those moments, words become the truest expression of discipline, or the absence of it. Discipline is not always about routines, or waking early, or going to the gym. These are outer expressions. The deeper form of discipline lies in the way a person governs their emotions, their impulses, their need to dominate or be heard, and nothing exposes that faster than speech. A man who cannot hold his tongue in the heat of conflict is not powerful. He is possessed by his own lack of mastery. He may raise his voice, spit venom, use words as weapons, and then justify them later as truth or passion. But in truth he is only revealing how little command he holds over the self. Look not for rehearsed charm. That can be bought, it can be mimicked. Many men can speak sweet words in moments of peace, but true internal order is shown when peace breaks, when tension rises, when the world does not go as he imagined. It is then, when the outer world destabilizes, that his inner foundation is either revealed as solid, or it crumbles. A man who speaks from stability does not need to control the conversation. He does not interrupt to assert himself. He is not quick to ridicule, nor does he feel the need to be the loudest in the room. His calm is not forced, it is earned. You will feel it, not just hear it. His words land with clarity, not because they are clever, but because they are connected to thought, to restraint, to intention. This is the fruit of discipline, the ability to hold the self before expressing the self. There are men who, when hurt, will respond with cruelty. When challenged, they belittle. When questioned, they gaslight. This is not about power, it is a lack of preparation. These behaviors are signs of an undisciplined mind that relies on force, shame, or manipulation to feel stable again. But discipline is not threatened by disagreement. It does not collapse under emotion. A disciplined man can sit with discomfort. He can speak without harming. He can feel without controlling. And so you must learn to listen, not just to what is said, but how and when it is said. Is he speaking to connect or to control? Is there space in his words for your truth, or is there only the echo of his own need to be right? Does he take a moment to breathe before he reacts, or do his words spill out like a flood without gates? These are the questions that reveal the structure behind the voice. A man who has trained his mind will also train his mouth. He does not need to prove dominance with cutting remarks or empty threats. He knows the strength of silence and the impact of stillness. He is not here to win arguments. He is here to preserve clarity, and clarity more than eloquence is the mark of self-mastery. When a man speaks poorly of others behind their back, he reveals more about his own fears than about the people he critiques. When he constantly blames, mocks, or exaggerates, he is showing the fault lines in his own architecture. These are not harmless quirks. They are cracks in character. Words are habits, and habits are reflections of discipline, or the lack of it. To understand a man, watch what he says when he is angry, when he is disappointed. When he is jealous, in these moments the mask slips, and you see whether his words are guided by principle or by impulse. There is no clearer mirror of his internal world than the way he speaks when things do not go his way. Remember, restraint is not silence. Restraint is the art of choosing the right word at the right time with the right intention. A man who speaks with this awareness is a man who has taken the time to build his inner foundation brick by brick. His speech is not scattered, it is not impulsive, it is deliberate, and therefore powerful even in stillness. You do not need to judge a man by what he says he will do. Judge him by how he speaks now. Because in his words his real training is revealed. In a world flooded with promises, it is not what someone says they will do that defines them. It is what they consistently do when no one is asking and no one is watching. Words are easy. Anyone can promise the moon, swear loyalty, or declare change. But patterns are what remain when the performance ends. They are the footprints left behind after the charm has faded. They tell you who a person really is. Not once, but always. There is a danger in being swept away by grand statements. A man may speak with conviction, with warmth, with perfect timing. He may know exactly what to say to comfort you, to pull you back when you start to drift away. But ask yourself, is he saying the same words you've heard before? Has the apology become a cycle? Has the promise become predictable? When speech becomes repetitive and action does not evolve, what you are experiencing is not growth. It is performance without transformation. Consistency is not glamorous, it is quiet. It shows up in the mundane, the way someone answers a message, how they treat others when they're tired, how they respond under pressure. Patterns show whether respect is sustained or whether it disappears when the situation no longer benefits them. A man who behaves well only when he's in the wrong, or only when you are ready to walk away, is not showing you love. He is showing you control disguised as affection. Charm is a learned skill. It can be practiced, polished, and weaponized. It can disarm you, make you question your instincts, make you feel foolish for doubting someone who seems so sincere. But sincerity is not proven through words, it is proven through consistency. If his words change but his actions don't, you are not witnessing growth. You are witnessing manipulation. Look at how a man treats you when things are calm, but also when things are tense. Does his tone shift? Does his respect remain? Does he listen with the same patience when he's frustrated as he does when he's trying to win you back? This is how patterns reveal themselves, not in peak moments of romance or crisis, but in the rhythm of everyday life. The man who consistently shows up with integrity, even when it costs him comfort, is the one who has built something real inside himself. Excuses are another trap. Many men will explain their inconsistency with stories about their past, about their pain, about how they've never felt this way before. These may even be true, but truth is not an excuse for repeated harm. Pain may explain behavior, but it never justifies mistreatment. And if a man uses his wounds as reasons to break his word, to ignore your needs, or to keep you in a cycle of uncertainty, then his pain is being used as a shield to avoid responsibility. Consistency is not perfection. Everyone will fail at times, but in a man of character, failure is followed by change, not by justification. He doesn't just apologize, he adjusts. He doesn't just explain, he evolves. You will not need to ask him twice. His actions will reflect that he heard you the first time, not because you threatened to leave, but because he values alignment between his words and his deeds. Watch closely. Does his behavior match his speech when he's not being challenged? Is he reliable, not just in moments of reconciliation, but also in moments when nothing is at stake? Real consistency isn't just about repairing damage. It's about building trust moment by moment, day after day, until the structure becomes solid enough to stand on its own. People reveal themselves over time, and patterns are the map of their true character. A single promise may warm your heart, a charming apology may make you cry, but it is the pattern, the steady, repeated choices, that tells you if you are being loved or merely managed. Trust the pattern more than the pitch. Trust the rhythm more than the song. Anyone can tell you what you want to hear. A man can say, "I've changed, I'm different now," or this time will be better, but look for the evidence, look for the changes that require no announcement. When a man walks differently, speaks differently, and treats you differently, not once but always, then the pattern has changed, and that, not the promise, is where truth begins. There is a kind of harm that hides in laughter. It doesn't shout, it doesn't strike, it smiles, it calls itself a joke. But what it truly delivers is something far more corrosive, a slow erosion of your dignity, your worth, your voice. When a man makes dismissive or degrading remarks and wraps them in humor, it is not comedy, it is a red flag wrapped in a punchline. Disrespect disguised as a joke is one of the most overlooked signs of deeper issues. It's subtle, it slides under the radar because we're conditioned to laugh along, to not take things so seriously, to be the cool partner who doesn't overreact, but your discomfort is not an overreaction. It is a signal. It is your intuition saying, this isn't right. When you are the target of jokes that make you feel small, stupid, or ashamed, you are not being loved, you are being tested. It often begins small. A comment about your appearance, a jab at your intelligence, a joke at your expense in front of friends, and when you confront it, you are met with denial. I was just kidding. Don't be so sensitive. You can't take a joke. These responses are not just dismissive. They are gaslighting. They make you question your own perception. They train you to ignore the sting and focus instead on staying agreeable. But humor has a direction. It either lifts people or it cuts them down. When a man consistently uses humor to belittle you, especially in public or around others, he is not being playful. He is asserting dominance in a covert way. He's reminding you of the power dynamic. He's making sure you know where you stand under him. These jokes are often delivered with a smile, but beneath that smile is a lack of respect. And respect is not optional in any relationship worth keeping. It is the foundation. Once it begins to crack, once the humor turns sour, you are no longer in a space of love. You are in a performance, and you are being asked to applaud the very things that hurt you. This is not a misunderstanding, it is a pattern, and the more you tolerate it, the more it becomes normalized. Some men use humor as a shield to say things they don't have the courage to admit directly. They may joke about cheating, about how you're lucky to have them, or about how no one else would put up with you. These are not throwaway lines. They are statements of belief, softened only by laughter, but the intention behind them is still sharp, and your laughter or your silence becomes their permission to continue. You may tell yourself it's not a big deal. You may try to develop a thicker skin, but ask yourself, do you feel more confident after these jokes or more insecure? Do you feel seen, or do you feel reduced to a stereotype, the flaw, the punchline? Relationships should be a space of safety, not sarcasm. If you feel the need to constantly guard your emotions to avoid being the butt of another joke, then you are not in a relationship. You are in a power game. Sometimes the disrespect escalates subtly. What begins as teasing becomes criticism. What was once laughter becomes silence, then tears, and by then the line has been crossed so many times that it feels blurry. But let this be clear, love never uses humiliation as a tool. A man who respects you will never laugh at your pain, even in disguise. He will not use humor to cover up cruelty. He will not defend his insensitivity by attacking your ability to take a joke. The way a man jokes about you reveals what he truly thinks of you, and the way he reacts when you ask for respect reveals how deeply he values the relationship. If he doubles down, makes fun of your reaction, or calls you too emotional, he is showing you that your boundaries are not safe with him. That is not lightheartedness. It is contempt dressed in comedy. You do not need to explain why it hurts. You do not need to teach him how to respect you. You only need to recognize what is happening and trust what you feel. Because when a joke requires your silence, your shame, or your suffering, it is no longer a joke. It is disrespect, and it is never funny. Blame, when used as a weapon, is one of the most subtle yet dangerous behaviors in a relationship. It starts quietly, often cloaked in frustration or disappointment, and then grows louder until it becomes a daily ritual. A man who consistently avoids responsibility and instead shifts the blame onto others, especially onto you, is not simply struggling with accountability. He is building a defense system that places him in the role of the victim and you as the permanent culprit. Over time, this dynamic doesn't just erode trust, it erodes your sense of reality. When a man refuses to own his actions, his mistakes, or his failures, he isn't just avoiding discomfort. He is choosing to build his sense of self on the suffering of someone else. In this case, that someone is often you. He may say things like, "You made me do this," or "If you hadn't said that, I wouldn't have reacted this way." These are not harmless comments. They are indicators that he sees your emotions, your reactions, your presence as the reason for his own behavior. He is not seeking to understand, he is seeking to absolve himself at your expense. This is where blame becomes a weapon. It is no longer about the specific conflict at hand. It becomes a pattern of deflection that protects his ego. If he forgets something, it's because you didn't remind him. If he loses control, it's because you provoked him. If the relationship feels broken, it's because you're not doing enough. Notice how the story always ends with your fault. Even if you try to explain your side, he may twist your words, use your emotions against you, or accuse you of being too dramatic. This is not just avoidance, it is manipulation through blame. What makes this pattern so insidious is that it often disguises itself as communication. The man who uses blame effectively can appear rational, even gentle at times. He may speak calmly while subtly shifting responsibility onto you. He may frame it as just being honest, or claim he's just expressing how he feels. But if every conflict ends with you feeling like the problem, something deeper is happening. You are being positioned not as an equal but as a scapegoat. When blame becomes routine, it starts to shape the entire relationship dynamic. You begin to second guess yourself. You find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, or accepting emotional responsibility for things that aren't yours to carry. You become so conditioned to the narrative that you stop asking whether it's even true. This is one of the most harmful outcomes of being in a relationship with someone who weaponizes blame. You lose connection with your own inner compass. At first, it may seem like the blame is situational. He had a bad day, he's under stress, he didn't mean it. But soon, it becomes systemic. He blames you when things go wrong, but rarely gives you credit when things go right. Your efforts go unnoticed. Your needs are reframed as demands, your boundaries are interpreted as attacks, and over time you begin to shrink in order to keep the peace. That shrinking is not love. It is survival in a space where responsibility is never shared. Eventually, the man who cannot take responsibility will turn fully against you, not just in arguments, but in his view of the relationship itself. He will begin to tell himself, and perhaps others, that you are the source of all dysfunction, that you're too emotional, too critical, too much. This mental framework allows him to walk away from accountability completely, and in doing so, he does something even more destructive. He rewrites the history of the relationship to support his narrative. The ability to take responsibility is a hallmark of maturity and self-awareness. Without it, there can be no growth, no resolution, no healing. A man who weaponizes blame creates a toxic environment where communication becomes war, where trust turns to suspicion, and where love begins to wither under the weight of constant guilt. In this environment, you are not growing together. You are being gradually dismantled. Blame, when used consistently, is not just a communication issue. It is an abuse of emotional power. It turns every mistake into ammunition, every conversation into a courtroom, and every disagreement into a verdict against you. When a man avoids his own shadow by casting it onto you, understand this: the longer you stay, the more you will carry what was never yours to begin with. Control rarely enters a relationship shouting. It doesn't announce itself with chains or commands. It often walks in disguised as care. It sounds like concern. It looks like protection. It feels at first like love. A man may say he's only looking out for you. He may frame his behavior as being attentive, invested, or just trying to help. But when genuine care is replaced by a need to manage, dictate, or monitor your choices, freedom begins to erode, quietly, almost invisibly. The line between care and control is thin, and those who use control as a tool know how to stay just on the safe side of that line, especially in the beginning. They may question your plans, not aggressively, but curiously. Do you really want to go out with those people again? They may ask about what you wear, not with authority, but with disguised discomfort. You look amazing, but maybe something a little more subtle. These are not always direct orders, but they are signals. And they are meant to influence you in ways that feel like your choice, when they are actually his preference disguised as guidance. A man who uses concern to control may check in constantly. He may want to know where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. At first, this might feel like affection, like someone who finally cares enough to pay attention. But ask yourself, does the attention come with trust, or does it come with suspicion? Does it create safety, or does it start to make you feel watched, monitored, restricted? Care nurtures freedom. Control feeds on fear. You may hear things like, "I just worry about you," or "You know how I get when I don't hear from you." These phrases often appear harmless, even sweet. But when paired with irritation, guilt, tripping, or emotional withdrawal if you don't comply, they reveal the real motive: compliance disguised as concern. Over time, you begin to adjust your choices, not because you want to, but because you want to avoid a reaction. And this is the shift: when freedom becomes strategy, when spontaneity becomes calculation, when your day-to-day decisions revolve around managing someone else's comfort. Control hidden in care will not always look like rules. It will look like compromise, until the compromise becomes constant. You'll stop wearing certain things, seeing certain people, sharing certain opinions, not because he asked outright, but because it's easier than defending yourself. This kind of control does not shout. It whispers, slowly convincing you that your world needs to shrink in order to keep the peace. True care does not demand that you change who you are to make someone else feel secure. It does not ask you to give up your independence under the banner of love. Love that is real celebrates your autonomy. It doesn't compete with it. A man who genuinely cares for you may have fears, he may feel vulnerable, he may even express concern. But he will not use that concern as a tool to bend you into someone safer, quieter, smaller. Control often escalates. What begins as preferences becomes pressure. What starts as checking in becomes constant surveillance. Eventually the narrative turns: "I wouldn't have to act this way if you didn't make me feel this way." Now the control is your fault. Now the emotional restrictions are presented as a reaction to your supposed recklessness. And you begin to wonder, am I the problem? That doubt is exactly what control thrives on. You may be told that the restrictions are because he loves you so much, that the concern is proof of his depth of feeling. But love does not clip your wings to keep you close. It does not isolate you from others under the excuse of care. It does not make you afraid of being honest. A man who respects you will trust your choices. He will voice concerns without expectation. He will communicate without punishing. And most importantly, he will support your freedom even when it challenges his comfort. If you find yourself negotiating your independence in exchange for peace, understand that what you are navigating is not love. It is possession, and no matter how softly it speaks, how gently it touches, how kindly it smiles, control, when dressed as care, remains control. And freedom, once given away piece by piece, is very hard to reclaim. Gaslighting is not just a psychological concept, it is an everyday experience for many who don't even realize it's happening. It begins subtly, not with screaming or cruelty, but with small shifts in how your words are interpreted and how your reality is questioned. It lives in language, phrases that twist your feelings, that recast your memory, that make you second guess what you saw, heard, or felt. When a man uses these phrases consistently, it is not a misunderstanding or a communication gap. It is manipulation, deliberate or not, and it leaves deep marks on your sense of self. You're overreacting. These three words are a classic entry point. You express hurt, concern, or discomfort, and instead of being met with empathy, you are told that your emotional response is excessive. You begin to question your sensitivity, your emotional control, your judgment. But more importantly, you begin to suppress your voice, because if every time you speak up you are made to feel unreasonable, silence starts to feel safer. I never said that. This is another line that chips away at your confidence. You bring up a conversation, perhaps one that upset you or felt significant, and you're met with denial. At first, you think maybe you misheard, maybe you misunderstood, but over time this happens again and again. Your recollection of events is consistently invalidated. What was clear to you becomes fuzzy. What was painful becomes imagined. And slowly, your memory, your own internal compass, becomes unreliable in your eyes. You're too sensitive. This phrase works hand in hand with dismissal. You feel hurt, and instead of your feelings being honored, they are reframed as weakness. The problem is not the behavior, it's your reaction. You are told that your emotional wiring is faulty, and the more you internalize this, the more likely you are to tolerate behavior that crosses your boundaries, because you begin to believe the issue isn't the behavior, it's your inability to handle it. You always twist things. This one is particularly damaging. It doesn't just question your feelings, it attacks your integrity. It suggests that not only are you wrong, but you are intentionally manipulative. This is projection at its most corrosive. Someone accuses you of doing exactly what they are doing. And by doing so, they flip the dynamic. You're no longer the one seeking clarity or fairness. You're now framed as deceptive, unfair, and untrustworthy. You're making things up. Gaslighting thrives on rewriting history. If a man tells you that your experiences didn't happen, that your concerns are imaginary, that your emotions are based on lies, he is not just disagreeing with you. He is attempting to overwrite your truth with his version of events. This is not about a simple difference of perspective. It is about power. It is about taking control of the narrative so that you no longer feel entitled to your own. I was just joking. One of the most common ways gaslighting operates is through humor. Hurtful remarks are passed off as jokes, degrading comments are disguised as sarcasm, and when you respond with pain or offense, you're accused of having no sense of humor. The focus shifts again, away from the content of what was said and onto your reaction to it. It creates a dynamic where disrespect is normalized and your discomfort is the punchline. You're the only one who has a problem with this. Isolation is a powerful tactic. When you're made to believe that everyone else sees things differently, you begin to feel alone in your perspective. You wonder if maybe you are the issue. Maybe you really are too much, too sensitive, too difficult. This phrase silences not just your voice, but your trust in yourself. Gaslighting language doesn't have to be shouted to be effective. In fact, it often works best when it is delivered calmly, logically, even lovingly. That's what makes it so insidious. The man using it may not even see himself as manipulative. He may believe he's being reasonable, even helpful. But intent does not change impact. If the result of his words is that you feel smaller, more confused, more dependent on his version of events, then manipulation is already at work. Words shape perception. And repeated enough, distorted language becomes your inner dialogue. You begin to gaslight yourself, telling yourself your feelings aren't valid, your memories aren't accurate, your needs aren't worth expressing. That is the final goal of gaslighting. To make you distrust your own mind so much that you hand over your reality to someone else. Pay attention to how often your reality is questioned, how often your feelings are labeled a flaw, how often conversations leave you feeling more confused than clear. These are not coincidences, they are signs. Language is a mirror of control, and when it is used to undermine your clarity, your memory, your instincts, it is no longer communication. It is a weapon. Walking away sounds simple, but in reality, it is one of the most courageous and difficult acts a person can perform, especially when the heart is involved, when time has been invested, when hope still flickers. We often imagine leaving as a dramatic exit, a slammed door, a shout, a breaking point, but the deepest kind of strength doesn't roar. It doesn't seek to destroy or punish. True strength moves quietly, deliberately, and with grace. It doesn't run, it walks. When you walk away, you're not choosing weakness. You're choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, self-respect over constant negotiation. It is easy to leave in anger, in fear, in the heat of the moment. But that kind of leaving is reactionary. It is born from a wound still open, from energy still tangled in the relationship. Walking, on the other hand, implies something very different. It says, I am done. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you started remembering who you are. Calm departure is not an absence of pain. It is mastery over it. It requires you to sit with your emotions, to understand them, to witness the full picture, and to still choose yourself without theatrics. You don't need to justify, defend, or explain endlessly. You don't need to prove how deeply you were hurt or how wrong he was. The moment you begin trying to get someone to see your pain as valid, you give them the power to approve your experience. Walking means you stop seeking permission to leave. You leave because you know you must. Often, we stay because we are waiting for the other person to change. We stay because we are afraid of regret. Because we want closure. Because we think if we try harder, love more, explain better, they might finally understand. But what you begin to realize is that your healing does not require their understanding. It does not require their apology. It only requires your decision to stop participating in a dynamic that continually asks you to abandon yourself. There is nothing passive about walking away. It is not surrender. It is a choice made with full awareness. You are no longer reacting to the highs and lows. You are not being pulled into arguments to prove your point. You are no longer trying to decode mixed signals or analyze contradictions. You are simply done allowing someone else to write your emotional script. That is power, not the explosive kind that shakes a room, but the silent kind that rebuilds a soul. Leaving with calm strength sends a clear message, not just to the other person, but to yourself. I know my worth. I will not trade my peace for proximity. I will not beg for love. I will not prove my value. The relationship may have had moments of joy, passion, even intimacy, but if it was also filled with confusion, control, manipulation, or disrespect, then leaving is not a loss, it is a return. A return to clarity, a return to boundaries, a return to your own voice. Walking away does not mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean you didn't try. It means you cared enough about yourself to stop bleeding for someone who kept handing you the knife. It means you tried enough to realize that more effort would only drain you further. The most profound endings are often the quietest ones. No shouting, no revenge, just a soft, steady step out the door, and a firm step back into yourself. You may grieve after you walk, you may question your choice, you may miss what was good, that's natural, but over time you'll begin to see that staying would have cost you more than leaving ever will. Staying would have meant losing yourself in order to keep the connection, and any connection that requires that sacrifice is not love. It is dependence dressed up as devotion. True power is not in trying to change someone who refuses to grow. It's in refusing to participate in your own diminishment. And when you walk, calmly, with no blame, no chaos, no pleading, you model what strength actually looks like. Not as control, not as domination, but as self-ownership. The moment you realize you can walk away in peace is the moment you reclaim your freedom, and that quiet act, that final step, says more than any final word ever could. When a man speaks, listen not just to the words, but to the patterns behind them, the tone, the timing, the intention. The phrases we've explored may seem ordinary on the surface, even excusable in isolation, but when they form a consistent thread, blame dressed as truth, control masked as care, humor that wounds, manipulation that confuses, they are not random. They are signals, and your ability to recognize those signals is not about judgment. It is about preservation. Walking away does not make you cold. It does not make you weak. It makes you awake. It means you are no longer willing to be shaped by someone else's dysfunction. It means you trust your own clarity more than the comfort of staying confused. You are not here to fix someone who refuses to face himself. You are here to grow, to move, to live with dignity. And sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to say nothing at all. You simply stand, breathe, and walk away. Not with bitterness, but with quiet, unwavering strength, because your peace is not negotiable. And the moment you choose it, you reclaim your life.